Well, I've been back to work for just about a couple of weeks, not quite. For a little bit of background, I was part of a reduction in force at GE Aviation on January 28th. That's when they made the grand announcement to all the people individually in a meeting that you will be part of a reduction in force. Here's your layoff notice. And that happened I guess a little bit over a month ago, a month and a half. And I'm back at work now. I'm back at GE after about 5 weeks of no work, of being in the laid off status. But as part of GE's severance package, they gave us 60 days of continuing employment, during which that time we were just to look for work. And basically we were paid as an employee to look for a new job, for new work, which was, I thought, a pretty fair deal, or at least a good idea to help with the process. So I'm back at work now at GE, and several people have been asking me, they've been saying, that must have been stressful, it must be a big relief, and of course it's nice to be back at work. Of course, I'm glad to have that part of my life, or transition at least, over with, and starting a new job. I can now count on employment, at least for the time being, which is nice. But in honesty, it really wasn't all that stressful. And I'll explain why. Because at the core of my being, let me take one step back for just a second. For Christmas this year, one of the stocking stuffers I decided to get for my wife, and I also got for myself, is phone cases, phone covers, because we have the exact identical phone, and it was difficult to tell them apart. We'd have to turn them on in order to see whose phone was who. So I got us phone covers, phone cases, that we can tell quickly whose is whose. And hers, I got a little decorative thing, but for mine, I found this case, and this was, again, back in Christmas. I don't know if it's backwards in the camera or not. Anyway, it says, keep calm and trust God. Now, of course, that happened to be really relevant during this process of being laid off. But this is where belief versus faith comes into play for me. So at the core of my being, the root of who I am, I think that covers everything else and affects everything else, is my faith, what I believe in. My belief in God as a Christian, and Jesus as his son, and all that stuff. But the difference between, for me, belief versus faith is pretty significant. You see, my belief, a belief in God and of Jesus and of Christianity and stuff, isn't based on faith. A lot of people say, it takes a lot of faith. I disagree with that. And for me, it was a logical process. I needed to understand and comprehend the concepts and the facts, and have a greater amount of facts and not necessarily proof, but evidence that suggests there is a God versus there isn't, and evidence that convinces me that Jesus is who he says he was, and things like that, logical understanding and comprehension of what I believe and why I should believe the Bible versus, not, or other religions, or being an atheist. So the faith part, the belief part, is the logical part for me. But the faith part is the practical application of that belief. So what do I really believe about God, and the faith that it takes to act on that belief, and the faith in how it affects my life? Sure, I believe in God in my head, and I believe and agree that Jesus is God and was a Savior, which is, what the Bible seems to indicate. But when it's time to apply that knowledge, that head knowledge, with an actual life application, in this case being laid off or something else, that's where it takes a little bit more faith, because then, I have to wonder, God doesn't answer all prayers. He's not a vending machine that instantly grants you all your wishes. He's not a genie in a bottle that gives you whatever you want. He is a God who can, but That's where the faith comes in. What kind of God is he? Is he an all-powerful God? Can he really do anything at any time? Can he really help me instantly? Can he really, give me this need that I'm asking for of a new job, of provision? And does he care? Is he a God that actually interacts with our life and that actually reaches down from the heavens or, whatever the typical understanding of where he resides and actually participates and cares about us as children? Is he actually gonna do something for me? I know he can, or if he's all powerful, if I really believe that, then I think he can. But will he? So that's where the faith comes in. How strong is he? How powerful is he? How participatory is he? Really, not just in my head, but this is the practical application where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So to summarize, yes, being laid off is a bad thing. I wouldn't voluntarily choose it. I won't say it's pleasant. But I had 5 weeks of what I like to call my sabbatical because I was looking for work. I was certainly actively doing my job as much as possible, looking for a new job and engaged with that. But I wasn't too stressed over it. And that's due to my faith, primarily.